What is up, fight fans? Been a while since we've been in your ears, but we are here. Pretty excited after everything that's gone on in the world that UFC 249 is only a couple weeks away. Very happy to have some action on our screens. How have you been doing through this whole deal, Mr. Pazewski?
I've watched a lot of old fights. I think I found the bottom of ESPN Plus app. It's been pretty good so far. It's tough without having fights. I think we're going on our second, probably a month and a half, second month now without fights. So that's been tough. Really looking forward to getting some action here. This is going to be an exciting time, I think.
Let me ask you this. With everything that's gone on, there's a stuff with Dana really trying to push to get some events in there. Sounds like ESPN may have been the one that told him to kind of back down a little bit. Thoughts on how he's handled this situation?
Yeah, so to briefly recap where we're at, UFC 249 was originally scheduled, I believe, April 9th, I want to say, without looking at the calendar. It was scheduled for New York, had a pretty good lineup there. Because of this whole pandemic, starting, I think, early March, they actually started canceling flights, delaying them, if you will. So that's obviously covers UFC 249. Starting to cancel those in early March, pushing out 249. Dana says, hey, this is not good. I want to get this sort of back on track. And he sort of tried to do the old circumvent the federal regulations by going to Indian tribal land in California. Now, bold strategy. I applaud his energy and the amount of work that it took to try to get that in. Dana's a really hard worker and really wants to, one for himself, wants to get the promotion back on track, but also wants to take care of the fighters. Unlike other sports, if the fighters don't fight, they don't get paid. There's no salary, there's no stipend, there's nothing. So a lot of these fighters are incurring bills, they're not getting paid. Really wanted to get those people back on. Overall, I think Dana has pushed it really well. He sort of got the stiff arm, as you alluded to, Josh. He got the stiff arm on this, what people are calling Fight Island, if you will, or the California card that got delayed. He originally had that set up for, again, Indian tribal land. ESPN and Disney was sort of on board with, implicitly on board with letting Dana do that. The government of California called ESPN and Disney and put the squeeze on it and pretty much said, hey, man, not cool. We need to cancel this. And Dana sort of got the rug pulled out from underneath him. So I applaud his effort and all the work that he went through to try to get that card live. Maybe not so happy with, one, the government coming in and getting involved, but also really I'm not happy with how Disney and ESPN sort of left Dana out to dry, if you will. Dana went through, again, a lot of work to get that card up and live. Disney and ESPN seemed like they were on board, wanting to get some income, and then as soon as there started to be some negative pressure, Disney and ESPN said, yeah, you're probably right. We probably shouldn't do this. So they left it out to dry, I think. If this goes off, I think all's well, that ends well, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with the actual card.
So moving forward, there is not going to be fans in the arena. It's going to be different. For me, I feel like the energy, they feed off the energy. How do you think not having fans there is going to affect these fighters?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there already was one event without fans. ESPN did a pretty good trial run of this. It was a fight early in, I believe early March, if not late February in Brazil. I believe it was the Kevin Lee and Charles Oliveira card. So no fans there, only essential people. ESPN did a really good job of kind of blacking out the background so you couldn't really tell as the fans. But to your question, how is it going to impact the fighters? So obviously it's going to be a little more quiet in there. You'll be able to hear instructions better, but you'll also be able to hear your opponent's instructions as well. So look for that to possibly be an issue. I don't know if it'll be too impactful for the fighters. You and I both kind of long-time sportsmen, if you will. When you're in a game, in a competition like that, you get into it and you sort of lose track of what the fans are doing. Now, you come in and out of that and you kind of hear a little bit, but when you're in the zone like that and you're focused on everything that the other fighter is doing, I don't expect the lack of noise or anything to play too much there. It's going to be weird to watch, as you mentioned, for the fans. It's sort of tough to not have anybody there. But again, they did have that trial run, and I think ESPN did a pretty good job keeping that as limiting the awkwardness as best as possible, if you will.
I haven't heard this at all. I was actually, I had to hear it mentioned in some other sports that may eventually have to go down this road. Any chance that they kind of pump in some crowd noise or anything like that, or you just think they're just going to not mess with that at all?
Yeah, I think that would be more awkward if you put fake noise in there. That'd be sort of weird. I think this will be the UFC going forward until we can get live events back and going. I don't know when that'll be, but yeah, pumping the noise in. We'll leave that to the Seahawks and the Vikings.
All right, well, enough of this stuff. Let's talk about some fights, because that's what everybody wants to hear about. This is a pretty stacked card, and we'll start off right at the beginning. The headline fight of the night: Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje. What do you got for me?
Yeah, so let me be clear. This card is not a guarantee, right? So actually, there's Vegas odds that say whether or not this card will go off. The overwhelming favorite, I believe, minus 200 odds, is that this card will not happen in Florida. I don't like that. I want some live action. So just start with that kind of caveat. There is still a chance that this could get canceled. Now, to your point, this is an absolutely stacked card. This is actually the culmination of probably 3 or 4 of the canceled cards. So a lot of these fights on the main card that you're showing here, a lot of those fights were headline events from the events that were canceled in March and April. So really an absolutely stacked card. Starting off, Ferguson and Gaethje, this one's sort of been cobbled together for what seems like now the 19th time that a Ferguson and Khabib fight has been canceled. That fight was originally scheduled for the original UFC 249 in Brooklyn. Khabib, now being in Russia, is not allowed to travel to the U.S. or leave Russia, so they had to cancel that. The Gaethje and Ferguson is the next logical choice, right? Gaethje has knocked out, I think, his last 3 opponents in the first round. He's an absolute killer. I've been pulling for him to try to get a title fight for a while now, and it's good to see him get some burn. This is a strange fight for Tony to take, in my opinion. The best case scenario for him is that he comes out exactly where he was. I think the winner of this fight, as Dana has mentioned, gets a fight with Khabib later this spring or summer. So that'd be great. Again, best case for Tony, if he waits and does nothing, he still gets that title fight. He's taking a risk here by fighting Gaethje, so I really appreciate Tony going through that effort. Stylistically, this is, again, a very dangerous fight for Tony as well. He's, I would say, a better submission artist if this does get to the ground. The problem is I don't know if it will get there. Gaethje's a former Division I All-American at North Colorado for wrestling, so he's certainly no stranger to takedowns and being on the mat. If I'm Gaethje here, I'm looking to keep his standing and make this a striking battle. Gaethje throws nuclear bombs, man. It's if you go back and watch some of those highlights in the Cerrone fight, the James Vick fight, the Edson Barbosa fight, dude's got dynamite in his hands. Tony's no slouch either. He can strike with the best of them, also as evidenced by his beatdown of Donald Cerrone. So I'm really looking forward to this one. As I mentioned, I think the winner of this is going to get Khabib. What makes sense for me is the loser of this one's probably going to fight Conor McGregor. Now, the guy's been out for 3 years. He hasn't fought any. This is McGregor. The guy's fought nobody in the lightweight division. I don't really want to see him jump right back to the top, but it's the next logical fight for this. You got Poirier sitting around at the top. No real reason for him to try to fight Khabib again. I think the loser of this gets Conor, and then somehow Dana's going to, I don't know, weasel Conor back into a title fight somehow. It's my take. Ultimately, this is a chance for the fight of the night. If I had to pick right now, Gaethje's going off as a plus 150 underdog. I'm going to go with Gaethje, man. I think he's got enough power in his hands to end this on the feet. We'll see.
All right. Well, the fight before them, I guess I don't know if they're calling it the co-main or what they're calling it, but it is Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz. And I'll throw up here from the UFC website kind of the matchup. But what do you think about this fight?
Yeah, this is another interesting one. So this one has been talked about. Cruz is sort of a UFC vet. He's been out for the last 3.5 years for a number of ailments. If you watch a lot of UFC, you probably recognize him from the commentator's booth. Pretty strange matchup for me, honestly. Cruz was one of the best bantamweights back in the day. Again, 3.5 years off because of a series of ailments. A strange matchup for me. Originally, Cejudo was supposed to face Jose Aldo, which again was a curious matchup for for the pandemic reasons and travel and whatnot. That didn't happen on 249, so Cruz has kind of stepped in here. I don't know what's going to happen here. We'll say that. Cejudo's been off for the last 10, 11 months. I think we know what he does. He's been steadily improving his striking, world champion, Olympic champion, grappler. So we kind of know what we're going to expect from him. For those of the older UFC fans, you know Cruz is one of the best technical minds in the game. So honestly, I don't know what's going to happen here. A lot of experts are predicting this to be the fight of the night. I don't know, honestly. I expect Cruz is going to struggle a little bit. I don't necessarily believe in ring rust, but 3.5 years is 3.5 years, man. Cejudo, I expect his wrestling to be a problem. Anything could happen in this one, though. Cruz could come out and be even better than he was when he initially had stopped. This division, to go a little further into the division, the bantamweight division is probably my second favorite division in the UFC right now. You've got guys, again, a curious matchup with Cruz, because you've got guys like Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan that are at the top of the bantamweight division that could have stepped in here. Aljamain's been out for some surgery. Petr Yan's also segregated out because he's in Dagestan or Russia right now. So I don't know if that would have been a good matchup for logistical reasons, but expect one of those guys coming off of whoever wins this fight, expect them to get the next title shot at bantamweight.
Okay, next fight is the heavyweight fight. Where, I mean, obviously these are two enormous human beings. Where do you, what are you thinking here? Do you have a favorite, or do you think it's just going to be whoever connects first?
I think it's a little more technical than that. These are some big boys, as you mentioned. Ngannou, I believe his only loss in recent years has been to Stipe Miocic. Other than that, he's been knocking people's faces off. Relatively unknown before, I'd say, last year, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. As you mentioned, these guys, one-punch knockout power. You don't want to blink in this one. Don't go up and get a soda pop or anything like that, because you might miss something here. I actually got to see Rozenstruik live at 244 in New York City, and that guy is an absolute monster. He hit Andre Arlovski behind the back of the ear and essentially shut his power down. The guy's absolute knockout power. Ngannou is the same way, 10 KOs on his record. I think he's 14-3 overall, 10 KOs. The last 3 have been in the first round. Rozenstruik's 10-0 right now. The last 9 of those have been knockouts as well. So, you don't want to miss a second of this one. Now, unfortunately, last time I said that in an Ngannou fight, it was Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis, and I think they threw a combined 30 punches that fight. I'm really hoping that's not the case here. I don't see it leaving the first round, though. If I had to lean, I would say it's going to be Ngannou. That guy's an absolute monster. I expect for the future of the heavyweight division is kind of up in the air right now. For those who don't know, Stipe, in his last fight with DC, I believe, had something torn in his eye and had that surgery. So he's going to be out for a little while. I don't know what DC is doing, whether he's retiring. So what I expect here is the winner of this fight probably to get an interim title shot with Curtis Blades, depending on what happens with those guys. You don't want to tie up the division for too long, but I would expect the winner of this to get that title shot, and then the loser will kind of toil around the top 5.
So the prelims, not to skip the rest of the main card, but we don't have a ton of time. So take a look here at the prelims. Let me get back to it and share the screen. What fights interest you here on this group of on the card?
Yeah, these are all pretty interesting matchups as well. Cerrone and Pettis, they've already fought once in 2013. It was a pretty bad blood fight at the time. Pettis, I believe, won that fight. First round knockout. Didn't look very pretty from what I saw there. That one's going to be 2 guys that have lost their last couple of fights. I'm not too excited about that, despite the fact that I've got a lot of respect for Cerrone and Pettis, both as fighters. That one, not so much, but hey, it's a good one to draw some fans. The heavyweight boys, that one's going to be interesting. This is going to be a grappler's delight. I tell you what, Fabricio Verdun's a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The tape on him, he's a former champion. Again, submitted a lot of the heavyweights. You want to talk about submissions, a guy like Olenek has to come up. I believe he got 58-13 as a record. His nickname's the Boa Constrictor, so that tells you what he's trying to do to you. I don't think you need to look too far into that. I believe from his 58 wins, when I looked, it was 49 of them were by submission, something crazy like that. Unfortunately for him, I don't think he's going to have what it takes to outclass Verdum on the mat. Verdum's going to be too much. I think that jiu-jitsu is going to be too hard for him to handle. But I look forward to watching that. Michelle Waterson, Carla Esparza, not too excited about that one. Both of those girls are kind of point fighters, so I wouldn't expect too much there. Neither of them will really challenge, I think, in the strawweight division either. The top two there are just absolute savages, and Weili Zhang and Jessica Andrade. I don't see it. Jacare Souza and Uriah Hall, that's going to be another good fight. Just depends which Uriah Hall is going to show up. I've seen him look like a world beater. I've seen him look like a bum, so we'll see which one shows up there. My pick for fight of the night, and I think a lot of underground experts are seeing this one, Vicente Luque and Nico Price. This is another one you don't want to blink on. Luque just recently fought Stephen Thompson at New York City in the UFC 244 card. He got his ass beat summarily by Stephen Thompson. That being said, he's got some power in his hands for a fighter of his caliber. Nico Price is another guy that goes in there, draws the line, and says, "Let's go, man." So Nico Price is a get knocked out or I'm going to knock you out kind of fighter, and Vicente Luque is going to say, "Hold my beer, let's do this." So look for some fireworks there. That one's going to be really fun to watch as well. A couple of the undercard matchups, those will be interesting as well. Bryce Mitchell, a solid fighter, so look for some excitement there. And the late addition that I just saw was Ryan Spann and Sam Alvey. I think Sam Alvey's in for a tough night, but Ryan Spann's a killer, man. That's, I think, going to be tough for Sam Alvey. But all in all, for me, this is like a Voltron of awesome UFC cards. You've got like the top 3 or 4 fights from 3 cards that are kind of combined together. I'm hoping this sticks together. The only thing that can stop this is the fight not going off. So I'm hoping for the best there.
So what are we going to learn coming out of this? I mean, obviously, it's kind of a different world right now. We've already talked about what they're going to be doing. Got some big fights in this card. I mean, is the UFC, what do you see? Are people going to be so rabid for fights that this thing's going to be a big seller, or do you think people are going to kind of be a little hesitant?
I think this is going to be a huge seller. I mean, you saw with the NFL draft, that was a record in sales. I think everybody's just bored, man. They're looking for something to watch. So I know I'm chomping at the bit to get back and watch live fighting. So I expect this to be a pretty good deal should it go off. Some interesting storylines in here. You got the lightweight, the bantamweight, and the heavyweight all sort of being, the top of that sort of being figured out with some of these fights. Dana and the matchmakers are going to have to figure out what they want to do coming out of this, because there's a lot of options. They show some curious matchups, but I think instead of doing nothing, they chose to do something. I guess doing something is better than doing nothing for them. So throwing some of these together makes sense. I expect we'll know a lot more about that, like I mentioned, the lightweight, the bantamweight, and the heavyweight division, and where those titles end up. For me, I think there's going to be a new interim title at the lightweight. They're going to have Gaethje. My guess is you're going to have Gaethje as the interim lightweight belt holder. I think Cejudo holds on despite how much I don't like his cringy antics, and potentially a #1 contender fight for the heavyweight division. I think Ngannou is going to stay on top of the Rosen Street, dodge the heavy frying pan hands, and I think come out with a #1 title shot.
Well, cool. Well, I think that's a pretty good wrap up of what we are in for. I am excited. I know you are really excited. I think, like you said, I think everybody's excited. Just watching people do something live again. But make sure you guys check us out on Twitter, especially. It is at Lunday, LUNDAY _MMA. Andy runs most of that, does a lot of stuff. We also have the website, LundaySports.com, and we don't do just UFC. We do all different kinds of sports, but Andy's had a little, well, not a little, a big change personally, but he's going to get back to doing some of his stuff again. He's a really talented writer, and he knows these fighters, these fights, and the MMA world inside and out. So look for more content from us. And Andy, where can they find you specifically on social media?
On Twitter at @A_Pizeski, and I believe that's it.
All right.
Instagram, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Looking forward to a recap here. Let's get some good fights.
All right. Sounds good, man. We will talk to you soon.
See you guys.